Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So we are still on the Waiting Journey series. I just want to thank you guys so much for the amazing feedback that I have already gotten on my Waiting Journey series. It really took a lot of courage to share my story, and I thank you guys so much for listening, for watching. And so for today's for the second episode of the Waiting Journey series, I interview Rob Kowalski, author of Why Waiting Works, and also the founder and CEO of Femme, a nonprofit in Baltimore. If you want to hear Rob tell us why waiting works, then just keep watching. Hey, Rob.
Hey, Katie. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so I had been sharing with my followers about you. So Rob Kowalski is the author of Why Waiting Works, and he is also the CEO and founder of Femme. All right, Rob. So I've been reading your book and I absolutely love it. I just love how vulnerable you are in your book and sharing your story and how it all started. So in your book, you describe yourself as a self-proclaimed reformed bad boy. So tell our viewers what that reformation has been like for you.
Well, I was pretty much the worst human being on the planet. No, I was just a bad kid that transitioned into being a bad adult. I didn't have a father around, so I really didn't have anybody to bust my ass when I needed it. My mom was raising me with an 8th grade education. She's only 15 years older than me, and she was doing her best, but I was a little derelict and started getting arrested when I was like 12 years old. And when I became an adult, I was girl crazy, probably because I was insecure, and became sexually active at a young age. Eventually became very promiscuous. I was a stripper when I started stripping when I was 19 years old. I became a nightclub promoter when I was in my mid-20s. I was really popular, and my life was a party. And I actually, at the time, I didn't know any better. I thought, I thought it was great. It was everything I thought I wanted. My life was very empty though. And I started to feel it, but I didn't really know what to do about it. And then I met Jesus when I was 25 or 27. I'm sorry. When I was 27, I had a road to Damascus experience. And, I had to make some hard choices. And that's when I decided to, I did like the most radical 180 a person can do at the time. I literally walked away from my nightclub promoting. I broke up with my girlfriend. I became abstinent. Decided to wait until marriage to have sex, and started reading I didn't really know anything about God. Started reading the Bible, going to church, and he's just done some incredible things in my life over the last 20 years. It's been super difficult. It's been a very hard road in many ways, but I never regret having done it. I'm currently working on things that were just far beyond anything that I would have even dreamed that I was capable of doing before. But it's,
So I read in your book that your uncle Gorgie was a big influence in your life, with your father not being around. Do you believe that kind of correlates with how you came to Christ, or how you learned more about the faith?
That's a great question. Yeah, actually, I've thought about so what happened for me was not normal. I tell people how I met Jesus, and that's it wasn't a normal thing. I didn't walk into a church. I didn't hit rock bottom and decide. I literally was in Cancun, Mexico, partying like a rock star, and I woke up and got baptized in the Holy Spirit. That's what happened to me. So it was not normal. Yeah, people were like, huh? Yeah. So
how did that happen?
Well, it had to be my uncle, because he was praying for me for years. He said he wore his floors out because he was on his knees all the time praying for me. That's the only thing that I can attribute it to, because it didn't make sense why it happened. but you know, he was always a good godly example for me, even when I didn't know better. You know, he was like the priest. He always says the priest of, a man's supposed to be the priest of his home, but he was like the priest of our family. You know, he was the one strong Christian in the family that put my sisters through Christian schools. Like worked extra jobs to pay for them. Just a really good man. But yeah,
That,
I
that
definitely attribute that.
that's very powerful. And you also mentioned that at the time before you had that transformative time in, you know, that you that your motivation for a lot of things, like for going to the gym, like for even your career decisions, were women, or women and
There
sex.
was. It's that pleasure, 100%. Yeah.
So tell us about how you, from being around a lot of women, beautiful women, and being in the nightlife, and you also mentioned being a nightclub promoter at one point. How was that transition from that to having, to abstaining, deciding that you wanted to abstain from sex?
Very difficult. I mean, it was, you know, I was talking to somebody about it the other day. I'm like, a lot of times when you become a Christian, people have to make changes, right? Like I had to change everything, literally my career, all my friends, break up with my girl, everything had to change. And it was like a detox because my identity, who I was so wrapped up in all that. Like I was, I had created this persona, Rob, where I could just strike up a deal with a nightclub owner, let's say, and make a lot of money just by bringing a bunch of people there, that we're going to also party and spend money. And when I stopped all that, it was like taking the red pill in Matrix, when Neo takes the red pill, like after he takes it, his life gets harder, like honestly, because now you're like, oh, wow, I was living in the Matrix, but I'm the kind of person that if something is the truth, I want to know. I don't care how hard it is. I want to know the truth. Doesn't mean I'll necessarily do it. More than likely I will, but at least I want to know. And once I ran into Jesus, it was undeniable that he was who he said he was, and I could have pretended like I didn't hear it, I guess. And that
So you
temptation was,
heard Jesus. You heard
oh
Jesus.
yeah, it wasn't like I heard an audible voice, but when I got baptized in the Holy Spirit, I knew that it was Jesus and he was who he said he was. It wasn't Buddhism, it wasn't Hindu or Islam or any of that stuff. Jesus. It was Jesus. It was Christianity, and Jesus was who he said he was. I believe that he's the only way. That what he says is, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. I 100% believe that he is the way and the only way, because I experienced it.
So why do you think, out of
Not
all
to
the
say
things,
that those people don't.
sorry,
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
why do you think that out of all the things that God could ask for you to do, he asked you to give up something that you loved and that you were used to?
Well, so when he called me, I wasn't happy, like, because here I am, I'm like 27 years old. My career as a, promoter, I was making a lot of money, was going like this. And then all of a sudden I met him and I just had to stop because I knew that, life wasn't just what you see anymore. Like up until then, I thought, okay, one day you die, so let's just party and have a good time until then, because we're not going to be here. Once I met him and I realized, oh crap, like there's something happens after this, and what I do on this earth is going to impact that. So then I had to make those hard decisions, but it wasn't easy. I remember thinking like, damn, he ruined my fun, but now I think back, where would I be if I didn't meet him? Oh my gosh. I shudder to think what my life would have been like, because I very well could be dead, in jail. At the very least, I would be a huge disgrace to my family, because I was so entrenched in that lifestyle and the partying and the girls. And because of him, I embraced discipline. And my life has been awesome. I've impacted a lot of people in a positive way. And it's been great. I'm like, I don't even know what I would look like if I hadn't met him. I probably would just look like shit. Excuse my language, but I'd probably look terrible right now because I just would have partied myself out. And I'm just like so glad that he grabbed me. I feel like I hit the lotto sometimes. Like, you know, I'm so blessed that you chose me of all people to do that to, because he didn't have to. I could have hit rock bottom, and you know, maybe then I would have came to him. I don't even know that I would have, because I was pretty far gone. But I'm so grateful now, looking back, that I chose this path. You know, there's a verse in the Bible that says, "No discipline feels pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it yields a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who are trained by it." I made it to the later on. You know, now I'm living it, and I'm like reaping all the good decisions. And I'm like, thank you that you came into my life.
Tell us about that journey. In the beginning, you said it was difficult to abstain from sex, but now you say you're reaping the results. What are those results?
Well, several. I mean, in the beginning, yes, it was hard because I was always used to having a girl around me. It didn't matter if she was my girlfriend or just a girl I was hanging out with for a short time. I was just used to having a girl around, and that was probably like a security blanket to me in many ways. So when I stopped, first off, I thought, okay, God, you better hurry up and send a girl, because I'm not going to wait long. And I thought it was going to be maybe 2 weeks or a month. And it turned into 6 years of me being abstinent. So it was very difficult. I had to learn how to even live without females, because I was used to just sex was a big part of my recreation, just big part of like what I did for fun was have a girl over, everything leading up to sex, not just the sex, but everything leading up to it. So when you stop that, you're like, okay, well, what do I do now for fun? I don't want to, I'm not even going to go to the bars anymore because I'm trying not to have sex. So it was a big adjustment. But, it is easier now for sure. 20 years later, 15 of the last 20, I've been abstaining. I've backslid there for a few years. But it's never became easy. There's a longing inside of me that my wedding night will be a very happy day. My wedding day, it'll be the end of a long chapter that I'll be like, man, it'd be nice to have that soulmate, that companion, and to be able to have guilt-free sex, like the only sex I've ever had as a Christian has been guilty, because I always knew what I was doing, what I was outside of God's will. So it'll be nice to have that. But I say all that to say, I'm not willing to settle. It'll be nice to have it, but I'm not going to settle. I'm going to find my soulmate, or I'm going to die trying. I will not settle. So
can you share with us, why has waiting worked for you, and what would you tell, I was watching your video, your first, I think it was your first video. He has a YouTube channel, by the way. I think it's 10 things about why waiting works or something like that. And it has 1.2 million views. So in 2020, people are watching a video about not to have sex. That is very hard to believe. So why do you think waiting has worked for you? And what could you tell others about that they say that, sex is part of an intimate relationship?
Yeah, nobody's against sex. First off, it's called 10 Reasons Not to Have Sex Before Marriage. It's got 1.5 million views, almost 1.6. But yes, people are watching it, which is surprising because I didn't know. I posted it and was like, it sat at like just a couple hundred views for almost a year, I think, before it just shot up. But, the purpose of the video was to explain practically the benefits of waiting. For me, how it's played out in my life is, so there's a great book called Think and Grow Rich. It's a classic success book. And it talks about in that book, and I reference it in my book, is something called sex transmutation. And it talks about how people that have achieved great things in history, inventors and people that have built large amounts of wealth, they use this principle where they've taken their sexual energy, which is the strongest of all human energies, and they've redirected it. They've rechanneled it into other things. And I was explaining to a friend the other day where it's almost like if you dam a river, you can hold the water back of a river, but eventually it's going to find an outlet, you know, and that's exactly what it's done in my life, where I didn't think it was going to be this long. I wouldn't have chosen it, but I have seen the benefits in my life where I've started a nonprofit, and then I wrote a book, and then I wrote another book, and now I'm working on a third book, and I got a consulting business, and I launched an online course, and I did a world tour where I was in Romania and then the UK speaking. And it's like, would I really have done these things if I was out chasing girls? Or, you know, like, no, I wouldn't, because you know what I do now? I'm waiting on God to bring me my wife. And I work a lot on the dreams and the visions that he's shown me. And now one day, you know, God's going to bring that special person into my life. I'm believing it's going to be soon. And she is going to be the icing on the cake. And we are going to travel around, and we're going to speak, and we're going to maybe write a book together, and we're going to build this, you know, nonprofit together that I started. And it's going to be awesome. But if he would have given me the woman before, let's say 9 years ago when I rededicated, if he would have given me my wife then, you know what we would have done together? Nothing, because I didn't have anything going on. Now I have a lot going on. And if you look at the Bible, I believe that is the order that God wants to do it. Adam and Eve, if you look at Adam did not get Eve until he had a job. God said, name all the animals. So Adam went out and named all the animals, and then God gave him Eve. Okay. And if you look at it, then they were supposed to work the garden together. We don't know. I heard a speaker talk about it. It could have been 100 years before Eve came along. It could have been 1,000 years. We don't know. All I know is the very first words that Adam said when he saw Eve were finally. So we know that he waited a while. God gave him a purpose and a job, and then he gave him the woman. That's the order. Too many people don't want to wait. They want the woman first because they can't deal with that longing, that appetite. And then they never make it to their purpose because they never dammed the river to figure out what the hell they were here for.
And you know something, Rob, I agree with you 100%. I can relate to you. By the way, I think you're a Scorpio. We kind of share. I was born in November too, and and Scorpios, we have a sex drive. You know what I mean? And I mean, not to generalize, but it's not like we don't have it. But, you know, for me, like I've shared about my journey, which people have listened to it. I'm not going to talk about it, but I agree with you that there's this energy that you were using for sex before, that you're using it for your purpose. And it removes a lot of distractions. We're not saying don't date. We're not saying that sex is bad and that it's beautiful, you know, but there is that for me, I really, you know, you don't have to agree with us, but I really do believe that there is such a reason, right? Like you said, you've been waiting for your wife for a very long time, you know, and I've asked God, like, why, you know, I believe that God is powerful, you know, so why didn't it happen? Why hasn't it happened like in a year, or why does it have to take a decade or something like that, right? But like you just said, you weren't prepared at the time, right? So I think looking back in hindsight, we understand why. And you know what? In your suffering, though, in your longing, you started a nonprofit in Baltimore. So tell us about what inspired you to start City Femme. Sure.
Yeah. So I rededicated. Okay. The very first, a couple things I want to say there. The first off, yes, I believe God has you single because there's something that he wants to do through you. I believe that your season of singleness is a gift that he gave you to do something. A lot of times people don't see it that way. I was the same way. The first 6 years, you know what I did? I stayed out of trouble, and my whole strategy was don't sin, and God will give you a wife, and you won't be lonely anymore. And it didn't happen. So after 6 years, I backslid. When I rededicated, I realized, okay, this isn't a long-term strategy. It's just to isolate anymore. I got to figure out something else. And that's when I started doing all these things. And I believe that that's what God gives us this season for, is because he wants you to do something with it. You have to figure out what that is. There's a great great quote in that book, Think and Grow Rich. It says, every adversity has the seed of an equal or greater benefit. So when there's something hard, there's always an equal or greater benefit. You have to find it. You can't just lay there and play victim. That is what the temptation is, because it's really difficult to get up and go, all right, I'll do it, because it's hard. But that is what he wants. And I believe if you do it, hopefully it'll speed the process up. But City Fam was, when I rededicated, I went through that same period for about a year. I was staying home renting Redbox movies every night by myself. Can't even have a girl over to watch the movie with, because I was like, wound up having sex. So I was just by myself every night. And that's when I was like, this sucks. And if this is what people have to go through when they're trying to improve their life, then most people won't make it, because they won't suffer the way I'm suffering for as long as I have. So I started organizing social events to give myself something to do, while simultaneously providing my friends from church that were going through the same thing, excuse me, so a social outlet, and my old friends that I used to party with. I was, trying to get them to come to church with me, and they wouldn't come, but I could get them into social environments. And when my friends from church happened to be there and they met them, a lot of times they form relationships and they would end up coming to church. So the people that I literally couldn't get to come to church would end up in church through the social events. So I'm organizing these social events. We started organizing volunteer events in the community, and started seeing more people's lives change. And, over time, the group grew, and it became what is now City Fam. And now we got chapters starting in countries or cities around the country, and it's become like a sort of a movement. And I believe it really has the potential to solve the loneliness epidemic, because especially, people out there, if they go, what, I think he's right, and I should start waiting, or maybe they are waiting. They know what I'm talking about. Waiting is very difficult to do when you don't have community. If you don't have something to do on Friday and Saturday night with some friends, man, it gets old quick. But when you have things to do and people to do them with that won't get you into trouble, then it's a lot easier. And that's what I want to do for people. Is not that City Fam is the abstinent group, but I do want to help people find community that are looking for it, because it's a game changer.
And, it's really amazing what City Femme does. You guys volunteer together. You help Baltimore City, a city with a lot of need. And it's really great how you, in your own struggles of, well, I feel lonely, you created your own thing. And that's amazing. And I also read that you went back to the club that you used to promote and started a small group there. Why was it important for you to go back there?
So my heart, I'm an evangelist by heart, and I think about what the word says about God's heart is to leave the 99 to go after the one. So that was always, my passion was to reach the people that I used to party with, because once I became aware, hey, listen, some of these people probably aren't going to go to heaven, one day. And I want to make sure that as few of them as possible miss it. So that's actually how I started to backslide, to be honest. And it was 2006. I was, I'd isolated myself for 6 years, had no social life, no life of any kind really, and also had no success at bringing my friends to church. So I thought, I'm going to start leading a Bible study in a nightclub. And I started promoting that nightclub on Saturday night. And anybody that came to my Bible study on Thursdays, we were reading Purpose Driven Life. We would go out and feed the homeless after our small group together. I would let into the nightclub for free on Saturday, and I would not make them wait in line. And it was the most popular club in town. So all of a sudden my Bible study blew up, because now it became the popular thing to do, to go to Bible study. So I had like drug dealers and strippers come in, and it was awesome, but it was very edgy to the point where I got caught up with everything, because here I'm back in the club scene, and I started drinking too much. And next thing you know, I was sleeping around again, and everything went out the window. But, I feel like there's a lot of people that are in the bars that I think that they're not happy with the decisions they're making. They feel emptiness. They want a way out. They might not know what it is, but they feel it and they want out. And if you can take it to them versus waiting for them to come to you, like that's the problem that the church has fallen into. Today's church, Jesus never said invite them to you. He said go, right? He said go with an exclamation point behind it. the church doesn't go anymore. Like, we have to go to them. And I'm not saying go there and give them a track or go there with a bullhorn and tell them how they're going to hell. You have to go there and just do life with them. Model something for them that they want.
And talk about things that are normal, like, talk about sex, talk about why it's, why it's difficult, or why, talk about these subjects that are taboo for the church, help people feel less lonely. And, you have done that. Sorry.
Absolutely. No, just totally agreeing with you.
And
I mean, model a lifestyle that they can relate to and that they want, because like, I think that, again, what the church does is we're like, okay, thank you for coming on Sunday. We're glad you accepted Jesus. We'll see you next Sunday. Good luck. And that doesn't like, all right, how am I supposed to do this? No, like, look, let's create a lifestyle that they go. So I go to bars now, I go to bars with my friends that hold me accountable. And a lot of times, guess who's in the bars? People that need Jesus. You fish where the fish are, and they see you and they're like, well, there's a lifestyle that I can relate to. And then they, versus saying, a lot of the people that are in church that look real good, on Sunday, they're out turning up on the weekends anyway, doing a lot of stuff they shouldn't be doing behind closed doors. Like, it's all a little, that part of it's a little hypocritical. I'd rather be able to have some freedom, be able to go out with friends and not, and it might look like I'm acting up, but I'm not. I'm just, if you look at Jesus at Matthew's house, he was there hanging around sinners. The religious people of the day said, what's he doing? If he really was the Son of God, he would know who those people are. They didn't get it back then, and they don't get it now. Religious people don't get it. And that's why the religious people are the ones that killed Jesus. To be honest, it wasn't the sinners. It was the religious people that killed him. So you have to be careful of religious people, because a lot of times they don't understand, I don't know, just the ways of God, back then or even now. Like, and that's why I think in many ways the church misses it. And that's why, in large part, we're losing ground. Between 6,000 and 10,000 churches close every year in the United States. Overall, less and less people are finding it relevant. And that's a problem, because God is still just as relevant today as he ever was. And we need him more now than ever, to be honest. And I believe Jesus is coming back probably a lot sooner than most people think. And if we don't figure out how to introduce him to people, it's going to be problems for, those people.
There's a lot going on. And Rob, just before we end, I just want to ask you one more thing.
Sure.
What would you tell so I don't know, I think your story is really amazing. You said you come from a single mom. As a man, your motivation was, women at one point, and now it's your nonprofit. Now it's your purpose. So what would you tell young men who struggle, young men who, there's not a lot of vulnerability in masculinity. There's a lot about be tough, get a lot of girls, sleep around. That's what makes you a man type of thing. A lot of toxic masculinity. So what would you tell, amen. So what would you tell other young boys about, I don't know, what advice would you give them?
Yeah. So I talked in some schools in Romania, and I tried to think like, what would have made me listen back then? And I tried to really spell it out. Like, look, you have to be smart. You have to be smarter than most people, because the world is going to tell you that if you sleep with a lot of girls, you're cool, and, all these different things. But if you look at the numbers, like the people that don't wait until marriage to have sex, they have a 50% divorce rate. And of the 50% that stay together, a lot of those people aren't happy. So if you think about that, that means if you go about this the way everybody else is doing it, your chances of being happily married are really slim. You have to be smarter than most people. You have to see through the bullshit. And I look at people like Tim Tebow, and he's a real man. And I wish I was as smart as him when I was younger, because he's a good looking guy, well respected, very rich, famous, and he didn't buy into the BS. You know, he said no. And now he's happily married. And one day he'll be, you know, enjoying his hot sex with his hot wife, and his grandkids will come over and visit, and all, you know, he'll have that. You've flipped the script though. Look at somebody like Charlie Sheen. He's the opposite. People envy Charlie Sheen 20 years ago. Guys wanted to be him. Nobody envies Charlie Sheen anymore. That's how it plays out. And that's what boys and men need to understand, that you got to see through the smoke screen, because the devil is going to lie to you, and he's going to trick you, and he's going to try to take everything from you, all your dreams. You know, he'll try to take everything from you if you let him, but you got to be smarter. And, you know, a couple things that I would suggest: you got to get into a good church. If you go to my Instagram profile, I have a link there to ARC churches, or you can just Google ARC churches, find a church. ARC churches, find a church. They're good churches. I belong to one. They're very like modern, contemporary worship. Usually a lot of young people go there. Secondly, and what I would do, honestly, is I would go to a different church every Sunday. Until I found one that I loved. Don't start attending the first one. Just go to a different one every week till you find one you love. When you find one you love, go up to the information desk, ask them about their small groups. Go to a small group every week. Same thing till you find one you love. Don't start attending the first one. Find one that you love. And when you find one you love, start going to that every week. Now you got your family, you got your community to do life with. And then last thing, get on leadership at that church. Even if you're a greeter, you're working parking lot, just do something to help them. It'll change your life. That's what I would do, because community is key.
And Rob, why until marriage? For what would you say for?
Yeah, we can talk. We can talk a few minutes.
What would you say for men and women, just to end, who say, "I am in a committed relationship. I am in love. I feel comfortable." Get married.
No, I love it. I love it.
Is marriage an antidote? Like, why marriage?
Sure, we can talk for a few minutes. Okay. And that's a common question. First off, I would say, I understand that this sounds extreme. I do. No sex till marriage. I mean, let's be honest. It sounds like something that was 100 years ago. Like, people go, yeah, what? That's like so dated. Who does that? Okay, look, if I was to say this to people, how about no sex before love? Most people go, okay, I can get my mind around that one. Great. How do you know if you're in love? Because what the Bible says, it says the heart is deceitful above all things. So your heart will trick you into believing something that's not true in order to give your body what it wants. Let's say you and I were dating. I could say to you right now, Katie, I'm in love with you. Let's have sex. You could say, well, I love you too, Rob. Let's just go to the justice of the peace real quick. Get married. That would change the conversation, wouldn't it? Because now I'm going to say, oh, let me think about this a little longer. Is my heart lying to me? Because as bad as I want the pleasure of sex, I equally don't want the pain of a divorce. That's why marriage works. Because now I'm going to weigh it. I'm going to go, well, if I'm lying to myself, this is going to be painful, because I'm going to have to go through the pain of a divorce. So now I'm going to think about it before I get myself into something very complicated with you. Because you know what happened to me before? I would have had sex. And then all of a sudden, me and you are in something, and I might start feeling a little possessive. I might not even want you long term, but all of a sudden, because I had sex with you and you're looking at your phone, now I'm getting jealous. Wondering, because you feel like you're mine. That's what happened. If you've seen it a million times, you've seen soul ties a million times. Two people aren't getting along, they break up. The person starts drifting away. What's the other person do? Reels them back in. It's a soul tie. All the time. You see it happen all the time, all around us. I don't want to get myself into something complicated that I'm not going to go the distance with that person, because it's very hard to get out of those relationships. People spend their whole life with the wrong people all the time because of soul ties. So that's why the divorce rate is 50%.
Yeah. And I'm going to just play a devil's advocate a little bit. So what if you do get married? Like, does that guarantee a long-lasting commitment?
No, but you
see it with these, like Jada and Will Smith. You know, people worship their marriage.
Did they wait?
What I mean is that they were married, or they're married.
No, and if anything, that proves my point. If anything, that proves my point, because they didn't wait. They had sex early. They got a soul tie, and they drifted into a marriage with the wrong person. No, but listen, I'm not going to say that there's guarantees. All I'm saying is this: you put the odds drastically in your favor. Again, all you got to do is look at the numbers. People that get married as virgins, 6% divorce rate. 94% of the time, they do not get divorced. People that don't wait have a 50% divorce rate. Think about that: 50 versus 6. Divorce feels like death. That's what I've heard. It's a terrible experience. You see people that get divorced and they go, I don't ever want to get married again because they're in so much pain. They're so broken from the divorce that they don't ever want to get married again. That's not something that I want to set myself up for. And the way to benefit, the way to protect
that attachment, because to me, in my experience, it's not only about what is it called, marriage, but also about being attached to the wrong person. Because when you have sex, you do get attached due to oxytocin, which is the love hormone. And it's actually the hormone that women have when they have children. It's the attachment hormone, right?
Yeah.
And so sorry, my question is, like, talk about that attachment. Why does refraining from sex bring that clarity?
Well, I mean, I did it, in my own life. My last girlfriend, when I rededicated my life to God 9 years ago, he was convicting me about the sex. I'd been dating this girl for about 2 years. We had broken up a bunch of times. We stopped having sex, and within 3 weeks, it was like the clouds parted. And all of a sudden, we could both see clearly, and we could audit the relationship, and we could both see that we weren't in love. The sex was making us think that we might be in love, even though we were fighting all the time and felt like something was missing. But when we stopped, and the thing is this is what I would say, actually, it ties into my next thing, is you said, well, if somebody said, well, we're in a committed relationship, what's wrong with sex? This is what I would say. Look, if you want to know that if the love is real, it's very easy to do. This is what I did. You say to your person, your significant other, I want to know if we're really in love, or I want to know if we're built to last, or whatever you want to say. I want some security in this relationship. Women should want that, because if not, a guy will drag his feet and waste your best years. We'll do that. We've done it. I've done it. And honestly, it makes it harder for you to find somebody, because now you're older, and now I see women get dumped in their 30s, they're 40 years old, and now they're trying to find somebody when they were in their 20s when they met the last guy. You can't let men do that. We will drag our feet if you let us, because we're all selfish deep down. All you have to do is go to your person and say, I'm not sure if we're built to last, or I'm not sure if we're in love, or I want to get married one day. And I think you're in love with me. I'm in love with you. I think you're in love with me, but I want to, here's how we're going to make sure we're not going to have sex anymore. And if we both become convinced that we're in love, we're going to get married, and then we're going to start having sex again, and we'll have all the sex every day if you want to. But if we become convinced that we're not in love, we should stop wasting each other's time right now. That's it. Because I guarantee you that if a woman is in a relationship with a man and she's having sex with him, she wants to be married. She does. Genetically, it's the way it is. Women release oxytocin when you have sex. You attach to that man. Men don't release oxytocin until we commit. That's why when they say, why buy the cow when you get the milk for free? A guy's getting the sex and he's not committing. What's his motivation? He's already getting the sex. That's why as a woman, this is what you do. It takes a lot of courage, but you go to your person, you say, hey, look, we're not going to have any more sex until our wedding night. You're not saying that you won't have sex with him. You're just putting the power back on him. You're saying, look, all you have to do now is marry me, and we'll start having sex again. And then now you're going to find out if he's really in love.
I can't speak for all women, but in my experience, sex is emotional. Sex becomes about being affirmed. It's deeper. It's not just sex. Like people will say it's just sex. It's really not. But I want to ask if you have maybe 1 minute for audience questions.
Sure.
You can, if
just to say one thing, just to kind of echo what you said, is when a woman gets the ring, what she does, she goes, got the security, right? That's what she's doing. She's going, I got the security. A guy doesn't do that. A guy doesn't flash his wedding ring. You know what he does? He has his arm around the girl. He's like, she's mine. I'm hitting that. That's because guys want sex, women want security. So you're right. It is a deeper thing. It's an emotional connection.
All right, Rob, this has been so great. Does anybody have any questions for Rob? No questions. They must be reflecting, Rob.
Well, let me tell you how they can get the book. If you go to whywaitingworks.net, you can get the book for free, and you get $130 in bonuses. You get a study guide, so you can do a small group study if you like, called The Truth About Sex. It comes with videos. There's an Ask Rob audio compilation. You get all that stuff. All you have to do is pay for shipping and handling. It's less than $10. And maybe it'll turn into a city fam where you live, and you can be part of this movement that's got us started.
Where can they find you on Instagram, Rob?
Rob B. Kowalski is my username on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook.
Okay, great.
That's correct. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Rob, for being here. I really appreciate your time.
Oh, no, thanks for the opportunity to share. Loved it.
Of course. Bye.
All right. See ya.
Wow, that conversation with Rob was so amazing. It was so interesting, so relevant. You know, in 2020, it's countercultural to wait to have sex, let alone wait until marriage to have sex. Let alone a man waiting until marriage to have sex. You know, I don't want to, generalize, but, typically that's not the norm. And so I'm just really excited to have had the opportunity to have this conversation with Rob. And I'm so excited that you guys are able to hear it too and be part of this series. This series is just as much yours as it is mine. And I can't wait for, stay tuned for episode 3. I have basically a girl chat / discussion. Don't get me wrong, men and women can join too. With my girl Crystal Thomas, and I'm really excited for that too. So stay tuned for that episode next week. And I love you guys so much. I will see you guys on my next video. Bye.